advised to give a statement every time we're going to cover this case, and it'll be very brief. YouTube allows educational content, and this could also include graphic content or things of that nature that could describe certain situations. Reading a court transcript falls under that because it's educational content, and I will be providing context to this educational content. There are no images other than photos of the attorneys involved in the case, but nothing else further. Describing what is happening in court is only to educate about this case. This video is Cassie's first day of testifying. Per transcripts, we will be reading directly from those transcripts. This is Tuesday, May 13th. Cassie Ventura, called as a witness by the government, has been duly sworn, testifies as follows. The court looks at the government. Ms. Johnson. Thank you, Your Honor. Direct examination by Ms. Johnson. Good morning, Ms. Ventura. Good morning. Just so you know, you can drink that water that's on the stand. Oh, thank you. How old are you? I'm 38 years old. What is your occupation? I'm a musician and entertainer. Ms. Gavin, could you please publish Government Exhibit 2A-101 in evidence for all the parties in the courtroom? Ms. Ventura, who is depicted in Government Exhibit 2A-101? Sean Combs. How do you know Sean Combs? We were in a relationship for a little over 11 years. If I refer to Sean Combs as Sean today, will you know what I'm talking about? Yes. You said you were in a relationship with Sean for a little over a decade. During that period, were you together consistently, or were there breaks during the relationship? There were breaks. During that same time, there were times where you got along well with Sean. Yes. There were times where you did not. Yes. There were times when you had arguments with Sean. Yes. Without getting into the subject matter of those arguments, can you describe what arguments with Sean were like? If they were violent arguments, it would usually result in some sort of physical abuse and dragging, just different things of that nature. When you say physical abuse, can you tell me what type of things that Sean did that hurt you physically? I mean, he would mash me in my head, knock me over, drag me, kick me, stomp me in my head. If I was down, how frequently was Sean physical with you during your relationship? Too frequently. Were you ever injured as a result of these incidents? Yes. What kind of injuries did you have as a result of Sean being physical with you? Usually pretty similar. I would get knots in my forehead, busted lip, swollen lip, black eyes. The whites of my eyes would be red, bruises all over my body. Just depending. Okay. Ms. Gavin, could you please pull up and publish for the courtroom Government Exhibit 10C-103 at 33 seconds? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention to the screen in front of you, do you recognize who's depicted in that still image? Yes, that's me and Sean. Do you recognize the location recorded in this still image? Yes, that's the Intercontinental Century City. What were you and Sean doing at the Intercontinental Century City at that time of this image was captured? We were having an encounter that we called a freak off, and I was leaving there. We're going to get back to that specific incident later on. You just mentioned the word freak off. Do you recall that? Yes. Who introduced you to the term freak off? Sean did. And how did you learn what a freak off was? Um, Within the first year of our relationship, Sean proposed to me this idea, this sexual encounter that he called voyeurism, where he would watch me be, have intercourse activities with a third party, specifically another man. And how did it come? How did the term freak off come about? I honestly don't remember exactly how it came about. Can you describe for the jury when you say the term freak off what that entails? Um, it basically entails the hiring of an escort and setting up this experience so I could perform for Sean. And what did the performance involve at a high level? The performance involved, I'm sorry. Um, it just involved watching Sean being able to watch me with the other person and actually direct us on what we were. And when you say the other person, who are you referring to? Um the third party, the escort or dancer that would be hired. Who was in charge of all the aspects of the freak offs you mentioned? The hiring, the setup, etc. Eventually it became a job for me pretty much to where I knew that if that is something that he wanted to do, I had the contacts to set it up and get a hotel room and all of that. But in the beginning, Sean set it up. He was in charge. And after it became your job, how did you know what to do? He would tell me. When Sean first proposed freak offs, what was your reaction? Oh, I just remember like my stomach falling to my butt, like just the nervousness and the confusion in that moment. I think I was 22 at the time. I had just turned 22. I didn't have a concept of how that would be a turn on, but I also felt a sense of responsibility with him sharing something like that with me. So yeah, I was confused, nervous, but also loved him very much and wanted to make him happy. So yeah. Did you agree to try a freak off when Sean first proposed one? I did. After that, were there more freak offs? Yes, there were. How, if at all, did your willingness to engage in freak offs with Sean change over time? I mean, pretty much over time, I knew that it wasn't something that I wanted to be doing, especially as regular as it became. But again, I just, I was just in love and wanted to make him happy. Well, despite not wanting to do freak offs, did you continue to engage in freak offs with Sean? I did. And why did you continue to engage in freak offs with Sean? He would ask me, he would bring it up at random times. And I think to a point, I just didn't feel like I had much of a choice. I didn't really know what no would be or what no could turn into. When you say you didn't know what no could turn into, what do you mean by that? Um, Making him angry? Very honestly, also making him uncomfortable. That I knew this thing and that I no longer wanted to do it. Can you repeat the question? Sure. You said that you didn't know what no could turn into. And I asked you if you could explain what you meant by that phrase. Ultimately, at that point, Sean controlled a lot of my life, whether it was career, the way I dress, like everything, everything. And I just didn't feel like I had much say in it at the time, being like really super young, naive, total people pleaser. Yeah, I didn't know if he would be upset enough to be violent, or if he would write me off, just not want to be with me at all. What, if anything, were you afraid would happen if you said no to a freak off? Well, over time, it turned into the fact that there were actually blackmail material too, to basically make me feel like if I didn't do it, that it would be hung over my head in that way, so that these things would become public. I experienced violence with him before that. The abuse had started before that. So obviously, in the back of my mind. And Miss Ventura, when you said that the blackmail material would be hung over your head, what, if anything, were you afraid Mr. Combs, Sean, would do with the blackmail material? Um, release them. Put them on the internet. He had many resources to do that. So, and you mentioned that at this point, violence had started. What, if anything, were you afraid would happen physically if you refused to do a freak off? I mean, it was always in the back of my mind that I would somehow be hurt by him, but it's Sean. It's Sean is a really polarizing person, also very charming. So it's hard to be able to decide in that moment like what you need when he's telling you what he wants. I just didn't know. I just didn't know what would happen. Miss Ventura, just to clarify one thing you said you called something blackmail materials. What were you referring to? Referring to actual videos and photos of actual encounters, the escorts? To be clear, that's the freak offs you mentioned earlier. Yes. Okay. And who was depicted in those videos and photos with those escorts? Me? Sean is in some of the videos, yeah. Okay. We're going to get back to this, but first, I would like to direct your attention to approximately December 2023. What, if any, items did you provide to the government? I gave them broken laptops, iPads, phones, things that had no longer worked, but I kept because I didn't know what was on them. And what was the approximate time period that these broken electronics devices were from? It was around the time period of being in a relationship with Sean. Your Honor, may I approach the witness? The court interjects. You may. Miss Ventura, I've handed you what's been marked for identification as GXB. Do you recognize that? Do you recognize that I've handed you? Yes. Have you reviewed the context of that drive? I have. At a high level, what's on that drive? Different communications and documents pertaining to this trial. Are those communications and documents from the electronic devices we just discussed? Yes. And did you also review photographs that are contained on that drive? Yes. Are there photographs also from the electronic devices we just discussed? Yes. And how do you know that the drive I just handed you is the drive that you reviewed before this trial? Because my initials are on here. Did you initial the drive after you reviewed it? I did. Your Honor, at this time, the government is going to offer some of the materials on the drive. We would offer the exhibits B 101 through B 112, B 201 through B 209, B 301 through B 313, B 315, and B 316. I'm sorry, B 315 through 320. B 400 A through B 402, B 500 A through B 503, and B 600 A through B 608, and all subdivisions thereof. The court asks, any objections? Mrs. Stevaio, attorney for Diddy, responds, subject to connection, no objection. The court responds, all right, they will be admitted. Miss Gavin, can you please pull what's up in evidence as government exhibit B 105? Miss Ventura, who is depicted in government's exhibit B 105? That's me and Carrie Morgan. With respects to when you first met Sean, is this photograph taken before or after you first met Sean? It might have been taken after, but really close to. Okay, approximately what year is this photograph, if you recall? I feel like this photograph is probably around 2004. Who is Carrie Morgan? She was my best friend at the time. At the time this photograph was taken, where were you living? I was living in New York City. And at the time this photograph was taken, what were you doing for work? I was modeling. Miss Gavin, can you take that photograph down? Miss Ventura, besides modeling, what, if anything, were you doing in the music industry around this same time? Around the same time, I really wasn't doing too much with the music industry. I'd recorded a few songs with the producer I was working with and in a relationship with. And yeah, it was really new for me at that point. Did there come a time when you released a song that you recorded? Yes. Did there also come a time when you signed a contract? Bad Boy Records? Yes. Approximately what month and year did you sign that contract? I believe it was in January or February of 2006. What affiliation, if any, did Sean have with Bad Boy Records? He ran the company. Before you met Sean, what did you know about him? I just knew that he was this larger than life entrepreneur musician. I was a fan of his music. I didn't know too much about him personally. And you mentioned that you signed that contract in around the beginning of 2006. How old were you at that time? At the time, I believe I was 19. And at a high level, what were the terms of that record contract you signed about Bad Boy? It was a 10 album deal, so yeah. Did you release an album? I did an album, yeah. Approximately when did you release an album? Later that year in 2006, August? After August 2006, did you release any other albums? No. After you were signed to Bad Boy, can you please describe your professional relationship with Sean? After I signed to Bad Boy, it was still a platonic relationship. He looked out for me. I had some rough performances, so he had my back through that. Yeah. Miss Gavin, can you please pull up and publish what's in evidence as government exhibits B 102 and B 103 side by side if possible? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention first to B 102 on the left side. Who is depicted in that photograph? That's me and Sean. What's the occasion for that photograph, if you remember? I remember it being the CFDA Awards in New York. And relative to your signing of the record contract, when is this photograph taken? Sometime later that year, I would say. Around 2006? Yes. Okay. Directing your attention now to the photographs on the right, government exhibit B 103. Who's depicted in that photograph? From the left side is Kim Porter, Sean, me, and Sherry Dennis. What's the occasion where this photograph is taken? It's the 2006 BET Awards. Okay, who's Kim Porter? Kim Porter was Sean's ex from before me and the mother of his children. Sorry. Miss Gavin, you can take those down. Besides the photographs I just displayed, government's exhibit B 102 and B 103, when, if ever, did you see Sean in social settings around 2006? We used to kind of hang out with the same group of people in New York. So we would see each other out there and they're at clubs. But that was pretty much it. How frequently would you see Sean out at clubs in New York? Maybe like once a month, once every couple months. Okay, directing your attention to your 21st birthday. Did you turn 21 in August of 2007? Yes. Where did you celebrate your 21st birthday? In Las Vegas? Miss Gavin, could you please pull up and publish what's in evidence as a B-104? Miss Ventura, what's depicted in government's exhibit B-104? That is Carrie Morgan, Alize Roshi, Sean, and myself. And we're on the outside patio in his room in Las Vegas on that trip. When you say that trip, which trip to Las Vegas are you referring to? 21st birthday at the VMAs. When you say at the VMAs, can you explain what you meant of the VMAs? That was the event that was going on that weekend, the MTV Video Music Awards. And what, if anything, happened between you and Sean while you were in Las Vegas for your 21st birthday? A lot of different things happened, but he kissed me in the bathroom of his, or in the bathroom of this actual suite pretty early in the morning. We had been up, all of us, pretty late. What was your reaction to Sean kissing you in the bathroom? I think I was just really confused at the time. Again, like young, new artist, like just didn't really know the lay of the land when it came to things like this. So, in my confusion, just kind of cried and ran out. When you say you were a new artist who did not know the lay of the land, what do you mean by that? Um, I just wasn't familiar with having an executive or anybody pay attention to me in that way and be that forward at that point. I just didn't really understand it. I was really pretty naive, I would say. When you say that, can you clarify what you mean by that? In a more than friends way, in a sexual way, romantic way. And at this time, at your 21st birthday, what was your professional relationship with Sean again? I was signed to his label. And what happened after Sean kissed you in the bathroom? I just remember running out and headed back to my hotel. I think I told Carrie about it at the time, but I didn't really share it with anyone. Did you want to kiss Sean at your 21st birthday? No, not at my 21st birthday. After your 21st birthday in Las Vegas, how, if at all, was your relationship with Sean different? Um, when we got back to New York, I would just visit with him and he would invite me over to his hotel. I think his apartment at the time was getting renovated, so I went to see him a handful of times. Which hotel did you go to see Sean at? The Trump Hotel in Columbus Circle is the one that I remember specifically. At the same time, after your 21st birthday, what, if anything, were you doing with your music career? I was trying to continue to go to the next album, continue recording, come up with a concept. Were you recording another album at that time? Yes. What influence, if any, did Sean have on your music career at that time? At this time, I mean, he called most of the shots. Well, all of the shots. If I had a new record, I would have to come play it for him. He chose what was next for me, basically. Before we talk about the hotel, what is the age difference, if any, between you and Sean? 17 years. And when Sean invited you to the hotel after your 21st birthday, what was your reaction to the invitation? I'm sorry, can you ask that question again? Of course. You testified earlier that after your 21st birthday, Sean invited you to hang out with him at hotels in New York. Is that right? Yes. How did you feel when Sean invited you to those hotels? I mean, initially, a bit a bit of nervousness. And then just being a young artist, like excited, of course, like, okay, we're going to go talk about music or we're going to talk about what's next. Yeah, I think it's a lot in that time period that's crazy. That's kind of a haze because it was a while ago, but just nervous and excitement. At that meeting in the hotel room, what, if anything, did you two talk about? Music? talk about upcoming projects or the actual next album and other things. We started to develop a more comfortable relationship with each other. And what else, if anything, happened at those meetings at the hotel? I remember being introduced to the idea of oral sex, and it wasn't something that I really understood or did at that point. And he basically taught me how. When you say basically taught you how, who is the he in the sentence? Sean. When you say you were introduced to oral sex, who introduced you? Sean. How did he introduce you to oral sex? He gave me oral. Did you reciprocate the oral sex? I did not. I went home and I heard about it from him. When you say you heard about it from him, can you tell me more about that? He just kind of made me feel crazy for not reciprocating. At that time, just didn't understand that kind of sexual relationship. I also still I was also still in a relationship with someone else. When you say you didn't understand that kind of sexual relationship, can you tell me more about what you mean by that? I was just so young. I didn't have even the vocabulary for some of the things that we talked about. Like I was just trying to understand, just completely sexually inexperienced at that point. And around that time, in addition to performing oral sex on you, were there any occasions where you perform Sean? Later on, yeah. What was your reaction to the hotel room visits with Sean? I think it was the nervous excitement that I say. It also just made me feel sneaky. I didn't know. I was curious, but of course ended up there and wanted to be like around him. So that was just kind of it's was just like, okay, I'm here. Leaving, it was just always confusing because I really didn't know what I felt. I felt like I I don't know what. I knew that I was making decisions for myself or not. I feel like it was just like, here I am. I don't know how to explain that. You said you wanted to be around him. Why did you want to be around Sean? I wanted to be around Sean for the same reasons as like everyone else at the time. It's just this exciting, entertaining, fun guy. I also happened to have my career in his hands, but yeah, just wanted to spend time. It felt special because not a lot of people got that kind of time with him. Around the same time, did you also take a trip to meet Sean in Miami? I did. What were the circumstances of meeting Sean in Miami? The circumstances were that we essentially, I didn't have a party to host in Miami, but wanted to spend time that weekend together. And so came up with the flyer that said I was hosting a party at a club in the beach area, Miami beach area. When you talked about hosting a party, can you explain to the jury what you mean by that? Yeah, as an artist, to make extra money, sometimes you're asked to host events at different clubs and sometimes to perform. And that would have fallen in line with me going to a club and making money for just showing up. And you mentioned a flyer. Who made the flyer? I don't know exactly who made the flyer, but somebody that we knew that could create it. Did you make the flyer? I did not make the flyer, no. Was the flyer advertising an actual club hosting for you? No. Besides yourself and Sean, who else was in Miami with you? I was there with Carrie Morgan, and Dallas Austin met us down there. Who is Dallas Austin? He's a producer, musician, and a friend. Carrie Morgan is the individual in the photograph we saw earlier. Yes. What, if anything, did you and Sean do together on this trip? Together, this trip was the first we had actual intercourse with each other. He rented a boat. I was the first to get there. We just spent some time together, and yeah. And you had testified earlier that at some point after the hotel visits, given Sean oral, you had given Sean oral S. Do you remember that? Uh huh. Was that prior to Miami? I don't think so. I think it happened there. I'm pretty sure. Everything kind of happened that weekend. Prior to having S on that boat, on the boat, what were you doing on the boat? Just riding on the boat. What, if any, alcohol were you drinking? Drinking wine during the day and then later that night started taking drugs. What drugs did you take? On that trip, it was ecstasy. It was a blue dolphin ecstasy pill. Can you explain what you mean by a blue dolphin ecstasy pill? Ecstasy used to, I don't know how it is now, but came as a press pill with a little symbol on it. So these had dolphins. Who gave you the ecstasy that you took on the boat in Miami? Sean did. Prior to this Miami trip, had you taken ecstasy before? No. Had you ever taken ecstasy unintentionally before? Yes. What happened at that time? I was just out of it with friends, laughing, didn't know what it was until a little bit later. And when you say you had unintentionally taken ecstasy, how did you unintentionally take it? I took it out of someone else's Gatorade bottle, just drinking Gatorade, but it had drugs in it, but didn't know. This was before Miami. This was before Miami, yeah. Prior to hanging out with Sean Moore, what, if any, drugs did you use? I smoke marijuana and I drink wine, and yeah. On this Miami trip, when you took ecstasy unintentionally for the first time, how did you how did it make you feel? Totally euphoric. It's an experience of something called rolling, where you're just really in the high. So you're super high. You're sensitive to touch. You're just sensitive to all your different senses. Johnson for the government speaks. Miss Gavin, could you please pull up and publish what's in evidence as government exhibits B-107 and B-108 side by side? Miss Ventura, starting with the photographs on the left, B-107, do you recognize who is depicted in the photo? Yes, that's me and Sean on the boat in Miami. And is this the boat you just described being on? Yes. And turning to the next photograph, B-108, do you recognize who's depicted in that exhibit? Yes. Yes, that's Sean and me sitting down, same boat. Miss Gavin, you can take those exhibits down now. After that Miami trip, what was the status of your relationship with Sean? I would say we were just together. We spent a lot of time with each other. Um, After that, now I know in hindsight, but I had become like one of his girlfriends after that trip. When you say you knew in hindsight, what do you know in hindsight? That Sean Combs had many girlfriends. At that time, what did you know? At that time, I don't know. I was, can't say naive enough. I knew that we were spending a lot of our a lot of time together one on one, and really felt, yeah, like we were in a monogamous relationship for a period. After the Miami trip, was it public that you were dating Sean? No, not for many years after that. Why was it not public for many years? It was always just a discussion of me being his artist and not wanting it to look bad. But I also know it was because of his family and his children and other things, personal things for him. What are those personal things, if you know? His family, yeah. Just, it was always something I understood. Around the same time, who, if anyone, was publicly linked to Sean romantically? Around that time, I believe it was Kim, but I think she had also just moved away around that time. When you say Kim, you are referring to Kim Porter. Yes. After you started dating Sean, what changes, if any, did you eventually make in your career management? Well, my management at that time was also the other producer slash boyfriend that I was with, and just looked at that as a major conflict of interest at that point. And yeah, I basically just trusted that we were going to find new people. And when you say you trusted that you were going to find new people, Who was the we in that sentence? Sean and I. To be clear, did you break ties with your old management after you started dating Sean? I did, yeah. After Miami, how did your relationship with Sean evolve? After Miami, we really just, I mean, at least from my side of things, I really fell in love with him. I traveled with him everywhere. I was in studio. I was just like a little shadow for a little while. You were a shadow to whom? To Sean? How did Sean treat you at this time? We had fun. It was just kind of like a it's my first real adult relationship. At least that's what I thought it was. And it was different. So different than anything else as you can imagine. His lifestyle was much different than mine. How long did you feel this way about your relationship that you describe being this? Strike that. You said that Sean's lifestyle was different. Can you explain what you mean by that? I mean, he had assistants at his beck and call. He could get anything done quickly. He had respect from everyone. He traveled quite a bit. So he was, yeah, moving around a lot. Miss Gavin, could you please pull up and publish government's exhibit B-112? Miss Ventura, do you recognize who's depicted in government's exhibit B-112? Yeah, that's me and Sean. What's the occasion when this photograph was taken? Do you remember? If you remember. This was at a this was at a strip club in New York. I'm not sure which one, but it was on Halloween. And what year? I would say this was probably 2007 or 8, 7. And Halloween 2007, is that shortly after the Miami trip? Yeah, yes. If you can pull that down, Miss Gavin, and pull up government's exhibit B-106 and B-109, both in evidence side by side, please. Miss Ventura, starting with the photograph on the left, B-106, who's depicted in B-106? That's Sean and myself. And where are you? We're in the back of his car, probably driving to the Hamptons or something. Approximately what time period is this photograph from? This is the first year of us dating, like within the first few months. And turning to the photograph on the right, B-109, right again, who is depicted in the photograph? Sean and myself in the back of the car. Is that the same car? Yes. And what's the approximate time period that this photograph was taken? It was around the same time in the beginning of your relationship? Yes. Miss Ventura, how did you feel about Sean around this time in the beginning of your relationship? I think I was just enamored by him. We were just having a good time. It was really fun at this point. How long did you feel that way about Sean? I don't know exactly how long. It was off and on for many years. Yeah. How, if at all, did your relationship change over time? I mean, over time, you get more comfortable with somebody, obviously. But I began to just experience a different side of him, which was his abusive side and his side that just was very controlling over my life and the things that I wanted to do. But there was still love there. Miss Gavin, you can take these exhibits down. Miss Ventura, you mentioned a side of Sean that wanted control over your life. Can you explain to me what you mean by that? Being an artist, at times, everything moves, everything moved really quickly for me. And I don't know, there was just no way of keeping up with what was happening. And I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question? Sure. You had mentioned that one thing that changed about your relationship over time was Sean wanting to control over your life. I just wanted to ask you what that meant when you said control over your life. Control was everything from the way that I looked to what I was working on that day, who I was speaking to. Control was kind of like an all-around thing to a certain point. How often did you talk to Sean in a typical day while you were dating? All day throughout the day? How did you two communicate? Texts, mostly calls? What about phone calls? Phone calls for sure. And when it became a thing, did you FaceTime? Yes. Were there times where you did not answer Sean's messages or phone calls right away? Yeah. What happened when you didn't answer his messages or phone calls right away? He's a bit of an incessant caller, or would have staff, his assistant, security, somebody continue to call until you answer or until he found you. When you say incessant caller, what do you mean by that? If there's no answer, you just keep going. Would he do the same thing with text messages? Yeah, that's just his nature. You mentioned that assistants and security would reach out until they found you. Correct. What did you mean by until they found you? Until they knew where you were and where and could tell him. Were there times when Sean's staff located you in person? Yes. How, if at all, did Sean's moods vary from day to day? It varied depending on what was going on. How did his mood vary? I mean, it would change at the drop of a conversation. A bad conversation that I had nothing to do with, it just swung different ways. I didn't catch that last part that you said. Could you repeat it? I said it swung different ways quite a bit. When it swung, could you describe the different moods that you experience? Yeah, I mean, agitation, kind of zoning out. If he was passionate about a subject, he would just be really focused. Yeah, anger. How, if at all, did Sean moods impact you? I felt like they impacted me pretty greatly. It got to the point where this is me speaking for myself, but like, you know how to handle certain people, you know when to speak to them, you know when to approach them. Like, that it's timing, or what you say, how you present something, just in order to make sure that the person doesn't become upset with you, or change their demeanor with you. Do you have an example of how Sean's moods impacted you? I mean, the most complicated and the greatest example are the abuse, because I also felt at a certain point when I knew that it wasn't even about me. And yeah, like me, like make the wrong face. And the next thing I knew, I was getting hit in the face. It was, you know, when you say the abuse, what abuse are you talking about? Physical abuse in a relationship, but there is also psychological. There's a lot of things going on. You said something about making the wrong face. Can you explain what you mean by that? What you meant by that? If I wasn't smiling at him the way he wanted, if I just looked a certain way that he didn't like, maybe I was a brat or something, like he would let me know I need to fix my face or watch my mouth. That was like those were things that were said in the relationship quite often. Fix your face, watch your mouth, or you have a slick mouth. You also mentioned psychological abuse. Can you describe what you meant by psychological abuse? That's pretty deep. I mean, psychological is often every day, not knowing who he was going to be when he woke up that day. The entire relationship, I didn't live with him. So we had time apart, and usually it was just like I always had to be doing something. I don't know if that makes sense. I had what you would call like busy work. I needed to make sure I knew what songs I was recording, what things were coming up, and then have to like list them out, or I wasn't mounting to anything in my life. So it was a lot. I mean, psychological is an everyday thing. Somebody constantly telling you who to be. When you say someone constantly telling you who to be, are you referring to anyone in particular? I'm referring to Sean. You mentioned you always had to be doing something. Yeah. Who, if anyone, would check in on you about what you were doing? He would check in, but I would also work with his engineers and all his people. So everyone pretty much in tune with everything I was doing. When you say his engineers and his people, are you talking about people you worked with in the studio? Studio staff. Yep. You also mentioned making lists of songs. Do you recall? Yes. Who, if any, would you list? Who, if any, would you give those lists to? I would give it to him, like an engineer or the writer, but he would have a list. He knew what I was doing at the studio. Sean. What was the purpose of giving those lists to Sean? That I was completing what I was supposed to be doing. That song was getting done. And yeah, it's my busy work. When you say busy work, can you describe what you mean by busy work? Work that just kept me busy mainly because a lot of the things that I did didn't actually come out, but be it music or whatever. I think busy work was just the way I interpreted it. It was just control. It was just control over what I was doing every minute of the day. You said something didn't come out, whether it was music or whatever. Can you tell me what whatever might be? Music wouldn't come out, but I also wouldn't get a lot of opportunities that would come through that I wouldn't. I was told not to participate in, be it a modeling campaign, which was something that I actually did before music, or a runway show. There are things that I just had to say no to. And who told you not to participate in those opportunities? Sean advised. We'll get back to that in a few minutes. Were there times in the relationship where you ignored Sean? Yes. What happened in your relationship when you ignored Sean? I mean, if I ignored him, he would call constantly, which I said I usually didn't live too far. So it was easy to send someone to just come see me if I was home. But it was definitely a not stop until you find me thing. And you mentioned sending someone to see if you were home. Who typically would be sent on the task? Usually security would be sent on the task, but maybe like a trusted assistant or something. Can you describe for the jury who Sean's security would be? Like specifically, just what were their roles? I mean, security protect him, kept an eye on me. How often would security? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It's okay. I was trying to understand your question more, I think. Understood. How often was security around, Sean? Oh, all the time, 24/7 security. When you say trusted assistant, whose assistant are you referring to? Sean's assistant. What are some of the names of the security who worked for Sean during the time that you two were dating? Well, there was D Rock, Bonds, Uncle Polly, Fahim, Malik, just a lot of people. But those are the main ones that I can remember. When you mentioned trusted assistants, who were some of the trusted assistants? I mean, in the very beginning, it was David James. It just kind of changed over time. Christina Quorum eventually, Neil Dominic. He had a lot of assistant. He had a lot of different assistants. And we'll get back to some of those folks. When you said security kept an eye on you, what do you mean by that? I mean, they could easily just come over and see if I was home or not. It wasn't really a secret. Yeah. Does that make sense? Was your relationship with Sean always exclusive? No. There were times where you saw other men. Yes. There were there times where he saw other women? Yes. How did you feel about Sean seeing other women? I was insanely jealous, but also super young. Didn't get it at all. But I was definitely, yeah, young and jealous. When you say you didn't get it, what didn't you get? I didn't get that he was him. As he would say, I'm Puff Daddy, and Puff Daddy has many women where, he likes the company of women. And yeah, I had to just really learn that over time, despite what he would tell me just between us. When you say despite what he would tell you, what do you mean? He made me feel like we were in a monogamous relationship more often than not. It was more figuring out that I wasn't in a monogamous relationship. How did he make you feel like you were in a monogamous relationship? I mean, he expected that of me. So I assumed that it was the same. But he definitely would say, like, I'm not dealing with anyone else or it's just us. And when he would say, I'm not dealing with anyone else, was that true? It could have been sometimes, and then other times, no. In what city did you live when you first started dating Sean? I lived in New York. And after you started dating Sean, in what part of the city did you eventually move to? I eventually lived on West End, around 60th West End. What were the circumstances of you moving to 60th and West End? It was a gift, actually, for my birthday. And I remember on my birthday, Sean taking me and my parents up there to show them. It wasn't far from his house, like all of the other houses. Where did Sean live in relation to the West End apartment? He was around. He was like 56 Broadway at that time, so not far. Who paid the rent for the apartment on West End? Sean did. Besides New York, where else and what other cities did you live while you were dating Sean? Los Angeles. I occasionally was in Miami, but I really didn't live there. Los Angeles and New York. Did you eventually move full time from New York to Los Angeles? Yeah. And what led to your move to LA? After spending quite a few bit of one-on-one time, I knew he really wanted to be closer to his kids. So that was ultimately the move he wanted to make, was to be closer to them in LA. Although I wasn't ready to move out of New York, I followed him. I went. So why did you move? I moved because I was in love and I wanted to be near him. And when you said Sean wanted to be closer to his kids, where did his kids live at that time? His kids lived in California, or some of them. Yeah. Miss Gavin, can you please pull up for identification for the court and the parties only government exhibit 2B 101 and 2B 102 side by side? Miss Ventura, do you recognize what's depicted in 2B 101 and 2B 102? Yes. This is one of the houses that Sean rented while in LA. How do you recognize this house? I spent a lot of time there. I had my 26th birthday there. Are these fair and accurate photos of what one of the houses Sean rented in LA? Yes. Government offers exhibit 2B 101 and 2B 102. Mrs. Stavio for the defense. No objection. The court responds. They'll be admitted. So they admit all the exhibits. Ms. Gavin, can you please publish for the jury those two exhibits? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention to the photographs on the left, 2B 101. Which side of the house is depicted, the front or the back? This is the back side of the house. With respects to the 3 floors that you can see, on which floor is the front entrance of this house? Front entrance is at the very top where there's like a clear glass. It's not lit from the inside. And what floor is Sean's bedroom on in this particular house? It's on the same floor. So the rounder part in the middle is the bathroom. And then all the way to the left is the bedroom. And it's at the top floor you're referencing? Yes. You can take that down now, Miss Gavin. Miss Ventura, between when you moved to LA and when you ended your relationship with Sean, approximately how many residences in LA did you live in? Let me see. One, about 4, I believe. Where did you live when you first moved to LA? When I first moved to LA, I moved to a building on 818 Dufini. Where did you live after 818 Dufini? After that, I wanted to get my own house. So I got a house in Studio City. From there, moved back over, and I was on, what is that? Wilshire Corridor. And then from there, moved to West Hollywood. In Wilshire Corridor, what address did you live at? It was 875 Comstock Avenue. Miss Gavin, can you please pull up for the identification for the court and the parties only government exhibit 2B 111 and 2B 112 side by side? Miss Ventura, do you recognize what's depicted in government's exhibit 2B? Actually, sorry, 2B 107 and 2B. I can't see the exhibit number on the second one. Focusing on 2B 107, what's depicted in the exhibit? That's the back of, was my entrance side where my apartment was of 875 Comstock was the entryway. And the other exhibit, 2B-109, what's depicted in the exhibit? That's that that's the Wilshire corridor side, the opposite side. How do you recognize this building? I live there. Is this a fair and accurate photograph of 875 Comstock? Yeah. Miss Johnson for the government speaks. The government offers government exhibit 2B-107 and 2B-109. Mrs. Stavio for the defense, no objection. The court then says they'll be admitted. So all those exhibits are admitted into evidence. Can you please publish them for the jury, Miss Gavin? Miss Ventura focusing on 2B-107, which side of the building does this depict again? That's the back side, but the front entrance. The front entrance is on the side of the building? Yeah, it's like a little roundabout. Which side of the building did you live on? I lived on this side. The front side that you can see on 2B-107? Yes. What floor did you live on? I was on 17th. And approximately how many floors was in 875 Comstock? I don't think it was much more than 17. Where did Sean live in relation to 875 Comstock? Right down the block on South Mapleton. It's probably a few minute drive or walk. What was his address on South Mapleton? I believe it was 200 South Mapleton Drive. Miss Gavin, can you please take down these two exhibits and put up for the court and the parties for identification only government exhibit 2C-103? Miss Ventura, do you recognize what's depicted in government's exhibit 2C-103? What is this? It's the distance between my apartment and Sean's house. And your apartment at 875 Comstock? Yep. Is this a true and accurate map of the distance between 875 Comstock and 200 South Mapleton? It is. The government offers government exhibit 2C-103. Mrs. Stavio for the defense. No objection from the defense. It will be admitted. So it's admitted into evidence. Ms. Gavin, can you please publish to the jury at this time? Ms. Ventura, how did you get between your apartment at 875 Comstock and Sean's house at 200 South Mapleton? I would drive, sometimes walk. Sean also had a golf cart that he would take. Approximately how long of a drive was it? A few minutes. 3 minutes is what it says here. Is the 3 minutes on the map accurate? Yes. Can you take that down, Miss Gavin? You mentioned that you lived in West Hollywood after 875 Comstock. Yes. What was the street you lived on in West Hollywood? That street was called Harlow Way. Was this the residence you were living at when you ended your relationship with Sean? Yes. Who generally paid the rent at your LA apartment and house? Generally, Sean did, except for the one house. When you said except for the one house, who paid the rent for that house? The house in Studio City I paid for. And why did you pay for the rent in Studio City? This is at a time where I could afford it, and I just had wanted that freedom for myself and to be able to have my own place. Why did you want that freedom at that time? Because I wasn't getting it a lot of other ways, and there was no fights, so I did. When you say there was no fights, what do you mean by that? There was no argument for me getting my own place. Not that I remember. Yeah, it was accepted. When you say it was accepted, who accepted it? Sean. And what, if anything, happened around the time you moved from that residence to 875 Comstock? When I moved? I'm sorry, Miss Ventura. Let me ask a different question. For the residence where Sean paid for the rent, what access, if any, did Sean have to those apartments? He had access. He had his own keys. When, if ever, did he use those keys? Whenever he wanted. Did he ever come by unannounced? Yeah. How frequently? I mean, frequently enough, but not too much. A lot. I think you answered a number of different ways there. Yes. I'll give you a chance to, 875 Comstock was the closest, and I would say there were a lot of unannounced visits there. So did it vary by location how frequently there were unannounced visits? I think so, yeah. How did you feel when Sean stopped by your apartment unannounced? I mean, depending on his mood and if there was yelling or banging on the door, or if he was just coming in to smooth and be nice, it just varied. Usually if it was to check in and see what was going on without us knowing and bias, I mean, me and my friends, it was just a little bit of a stomach and knots moment. When you say stomach and knots moment, what do you mean by that? Didn't know what was going to come of the visit or why Sean might have been angry to start. So yeah. What were you concerned could happen? Objection. The defense objects. The court responds, Miss Johnson, can you rephrase? I'll move. Miss Ventura, you were asked some questions. You talked about your music earlier. You had been recording. Yes. Approximately how many songs did you record during your relationship with Sean? Hundreds of songs. What happened to the hundreds of songs that you recorded? Some of them got released, some of them got leaked on the internet prior to like a proper release, and some just didn't see the light of day. Besides the songs that were released, did you release any additional albums when you dated Sean? No. I put out a mixtape. What's a mixtape? It was a free album like for fans that had been waiting for so long for music. Approximately what year did you put out that mixtape? I believe it was 2011 or 12. I'm not 100% sure. How many albums on your record deal were not released? 9? And what, if any, compensation do you receive if albums are not released? You don't. You barely receive it when they are released. What, if any, impact did not releasing albums have on you financially? I mean, it was not released. Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry. Sure. What, if any, impact did not releasing albums have on you financially? I mean, financially, I didn't make anything off of them, but I think it was just more of a you're not releasing music, you're not doing your job. So the career was kind of stifled. Why did you not release another album during this time? You're asking me? Well, put another way, what were you doing instead of when you working on your music? What were you doing? When I wasn't working on my music, I was recovering from partying. That was a big that took a big chunk of my life. I just plainly the freak offs became a job where there was no space to do anything else but to recover and just try to feel normal again. When you say partying, what do you mean by partying? Staying up for days on end, taking drugs and other different substances, drinking, having sex with strangers over days. Does partying include what you described earlier as freak offs? Yeah. Before we move on, who ultimately decided whether you could release another album? Sean did. How much time of your week did freak offs take? It would depend on how long they were. They range anywhere from 36, 48 to 72 hours. I feel like the longest one ever was 4 days, maybe even more, like on and off with breaks. So it was a significant part of the week. And you also testified just a moment ago about recovery. What, if anything, were you recovering from after a freak off? Recovering from drugs, dehydration, the just staying awake all the time? The court interjects. Miss Johnson, when you come to a good landing place, we can take our mid afternoon break. Miss Johnson responds, Your Honor, I think this is a good landing place if the court is amendable. The court says, Thank you. Members of the jury, it's 12:20 right now. I have been informed that your lunch is here, so let's come back at 1 p.m. So the jury rises and everybody's dismissed for lunch. Okay, so they've had lunch and we're back in session. The court, welcome back, Miss Ventura. You understand you're still under oath? Yes. Miss Johnson, you may proceed. All right, so Miss Johnson again. Miss Ventura, earlier this morning, you testified about eventually changing your career management after you started dating Sean. Yes. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. Eventually, who, if anyone, managed your career? Eventually, it was kind of a group effort with Sean and in the background, but I worked with a man named James Cruz who also helped manage Sean. Okay. helped him manage himself. Where, if you know, did James Cruz work? James Cruz worked for Bad Boy, the company. Okay, what relationship, if any, did James Cruz have with Sean? They had a business relationship together, did a lot of work together. What, if anything, did James Cruz tell you about his role as your manager? Objection. The defense objects. Your Honor, we discussed this yesterday, says the government says. Is this the issue from yesterday? Government replies, this is the issue from yesterday. That's overruled. Miss Johnson continues with her examination of Miss Ventura. Miss Ventura, let me repeat the question. While Mr. Cruz was managing you, what if anything, did he tell you about his role in managing your career? His role in managing my career was that he was managing me with one hand tied behind his back. Is that what Mr. Cruz told you? Yes. And what did you understand Mr. Cruz to mean when he told you he had one hand tied behind his back? That he couldn't work as a normal manager, music manager, that he had to have decisions go through other parties. And yeah, just a different way of doing things. Who are the other parties who decisions would go through? Sean. How did you primarily earn money while you were dating Sean? I would do club hostings, as I talked about earlier, occasionally a campaign or some sort of modeling job. Yeah, along those lines. For those club hostings, approximately how much were you paid? Anywhere between 7,500 to 20,000. Just depends on whether or not I would perform or what I had to do. What reaction, if any, did Sean have to your hosting jobs? He was supportive of them for the most part. If he didn't want me to do one, he would let us know. And how common was it for him to say no to a job? It was pretty common. Turning to a different topic now. When you first started dating Sean, what, if any, comments would he make about your physical appearance? Oh, well, anything from I look too Mexican with my hair like that to I needed to have my nails done a certain way. I mean, he would clown my chipped nail polish and dirty sneakers. That was like a thing, but appearance was very important to him, my appearance. How soon after you started dating Sean did he start making comments like you just described? It was pretty immediate. What, if anything, did Sean say about how he wanted you to dress? It varied depending on what was going on. Some days he would want me to be really sexy and be his woman. And then other days, I could be on my tomboy looks and stuff like that. But he was just very involved in it. Yeah. You mentioned your nails earlier. Mm-hmm. How did Sean say he wanted your nails to look? He preferred them to be white from the beginning of our relationship. They just always had to be done for sure, but specifically during the freak offs, like white or French tip. And you also mentioned how your hair was parted. How did Sean want your hair to look? Hair, specifically when? It varied. What were some of the things he said to you about your hair? Well, I mean, the biggest change was that I shaved my head around 2009 after talking about it for quite some time. But everything, the way it was styled that day, to the color, everything. What else, if anything, did Sean say he wanted you to do with your physical appearance? I mean, we had discussed about breast implants. We had a ton of conversations about my body. And at that time, like, I mean, now I'm 38 years old and a woman. I didn't have much body to really talk about. I was still developing. So there may be comments about working out or just like keeping my shape a certain way when there wasn't much there to begin with. Approximately how much time did you spend on your appearance weekly while you dated Sean? All the time. If I wasn't doing my nails, I was getting a tan. And if I wasn't getting a tan, I was doing some else. And more often than not, like the physical prep was like was for the freak offs, also to be, next to him and be his girlfriend. But yeah, I had to look a certain way during the freak offs. Okay, we'll get back to that. How frequently did Sean comment on your appearance? Daily. And how often was it for Sean to make specific demands about how you looked? It was very common. How would you feel about the comments that Sean made about your appearance? That also varied. I mean, he kind of critiqued a lot of people around me, other artists as well. So, like, it wasn't a shocker. But after a while, that wears down on you. When you're confident and your self worth, definitely. My self worth took a hit for the entirety of the relationship. Just trying to establish who I was and who I wanted to be and who I was allowed to be. Turning to a slightly different topic, you testified earlier that Sean paid rent for you at several residences. What else, if anything, did he pay for? He paid for cars, clothing, things like that, trips we take together. Did he ever give you money to spend? He did, yeah. When, if ever, did he take possessions away from you? All the time. But that was kind of like if you're not doing what I'm asking of you, if you're out of line in any way, I'll get my card taken away. Like, I got kicked out of the house, my apartment. I would have jewelry taken, and it was very random depending on how he felt. Besides, you mentioned your car, your jewelry, you mentioned your house. Is there anything else that he would take away? My self-confidence? Just physical things. But at that point, to me, the physical things didn't really matter. I really just wanted his approval. Who would typically take these things? I mean, staff, I would assume. I don't want you to assume. I'm sorry. No worries. I shouldn't. If I wasn't there, it would have had to have been a staff member or security. Somebody that had access. Objection. Object to speculation, the defense speaks. Court says sustain. The jury should disregard the witness's last answer. Ms. Ventura, let me ask some more specific questions. You mentioned that laptops were taken. Mm-hmm. What else, if any, other electronics were taken from you? My phone? Who took laptops or your phone from you? They would be taken by Sean's direction. Somebody would come take them. I don't. Objection? Same objection? Yes, the defense answers. Miss Johnson, can you lay some foundation? Miss Johnson responds, sure. Miss Ventura, did Sean ever take any electronics from you personally? Yes. Did anyone else ever take electronics from you personally besides Sean? Yes. Who were those people? Security. Who from security? Specifically, yes. I know that D-Rock was a person that used to take things by direction. Objection. The defense objects. The court says it's overruled. How long? Strike that. Would you get these items back when they were taken? Yeah. How long would they typically be gone for? It depends how long I was being punished for, I guess. How were they returned to you? Sean would give them back to me if I would go to his house, and he would give them back to me. We've talked about a few employees so far. How frequently were you in contact with Sean's employees during the relationship? Regularly, daily. Ms. Gavin, can you please pull up Government Exhibit 2A-301 and 2A-305 for identification for the parties and the court only? Ms. Ventura, starting with the photographs on the left, do you recognize that individual? Yes. Who is that? Christina Coram. And turning to the photograph B, the right, do you recognize that individual? Yes. Who is that? Tony Fletcher. How do you recognize these individuals? I was around them for several years while I dated Sean. Who did they work for? They work for Sean. Are these true and accurate photos of Christina Coram and Tony Fletcher? Yes. The government offers exhibits 2A-301 and 2A-305. Mrs. Stavio for the defense. No objection. The court states they are admitted. So the photos are admitted into evidence. Can you please publish them to the jury, Ms. Gavin? Ms. Ventura, directing your attention to 2A-305. Ms. Fletcher, how frequently did you interact with Ms. Fletcher while you were dating Sean? When she worked for the company, when she was around, I talked to her regularly every day. For what reason would you speak to Ms. Fletcher? Usually financial. Like when I just got a lot of transitioning of my accounts, things like that, and she helped me with those things, pay bills, and defense speaks. Your Honor, I apologize. We have a lot of vague narratives without any time period. If Miss Johnson could be more specific with respects to the years, at least, that would be helpful. The court interjects. I don't understand the objection. What's the basis for the objection? If any event is overruled, and now that you've said that, and Miss Johnson, I think will help guide our discussion this afternoon. Are we getting a fresh question? Yes. The government responds. The court responds, yes, okay, good. The government continues with its questioning. Ms. Ventura, relative to when you started dating Sean, how soon after did you start speaking to Miss Fletcher? I started speaking to Miss Fletcher, I would say it's within the first 3 years of the relationship. Okay. And turning to Christina Coram on the left-hand side, government 2A-301, at what point in your relationship did you start communicating with Miss Coram? As soon as she started? I'm not positive of the year. Was that in the beginning, the middle, or the end of your relationship with Sean? It was like the middle of the relationship. What did you call Miss Coram? I called her KK. And how frequently did you interact with KK? Every day. And was that starting from approximately the middle of the relationship with Sean when Miss Coram started working for him? Yes. And what's the subject matter would you communicate with KK about? Everything from scheduling to what kind of mood he was in. I talked to KK about a lot. She knew a lot about my personal things, doctor's appointments, and everything. You testified earlier about security coming to find you. Do you remember that testimony? Yes. Ms. Gavin, can you please take down these two exhibits? Can you please pull up for the identification for the court and the parties, government exhibit 2A-202 and 2A-2A-204. Ms. Ventura, do you recognize who is depicted in the government's exhibit 2A-204? Yes. Who's that? That's D-Rock. What about government's exhibit 2A-204? Yes, that's Uncle Polly. How do you recognize these individuals? I spent many years around them. Did they work for Sean? Yes. And what was their role again? They were both security. And are these true and accurate photos of D-Rock and Uncle Polly? Yes. The government offers government exhibits 2A-202 and 2A-204. No objection from the defense. The court admits these exhibits. If you can please publish them to the jury, Miss Gavin. Miss Ventura, I believe you testified earlier that it was D-Rock had taken a phone from you before. Is that right? Yes. Is that individual depicted in government exhibit 2A-202? Yes. Miss Gavin, can you please pull up for identification exhibit 2A-201 and exhibit 2A-205 for the court and the parties only? Ms. Ventura, starting with government exhibit 2A-201, do you recognize this individual? Yes. Who is that? Roger Bonds. And on the right-hand side, government's exhibit 2A-205, do you recognize that individual? Yes. Who is that? Ruben Sandy. How do you recognize these individuals? I spent many years around them as well. And what roles did they have? Security? Did they work for Mr. Sean? Yes. The government offers exhibits 2A-201 and 2A-205. Defense, no objection. Court, they will be admitted. Exhibits are admitted. Can you please publish those to the jury, Ms. Gavin? Ms. Ventura, you testified that the 2A-201 depicts Roger Bonds, right? Yes. And the other exhibit, 2A-205, is Ruben Sandy? Correct. Did Ruben Sandy go by any nicknames? Rube. Yep. Ms. Gavin, you can take those down. And finally, can you pull up Government Exhibit 2A-203 for identification for the court and the parties? Ms. Ventura, do you recognize those depicted in the government's Exhibit 2A-203? Yes. Who is this? That's Fahim. He was security driver for Sean. When you say security driver, what's the position? He's the main driver, but he also provides security. Okay. Do you recognize Fahim? I was around him quite a lot. The government offers Government Exhibits 2A-203. It will be admitted, the court says. No objection, says the defense, and so evidence is admitted. Can you please publish the exhibits to the jury, Ms. Gavin? You can take that one down now, Ms. Gavin. Ms. Ventura, which of the people in those photos we just looked at came to look for you when you did not answer Sean's calls? D-Rock. How frequently were you in Sean's residence when you dated him? All the time. Which, if any, of Sean Combs had safes? They all did. How do you know that? Because I saw them. And who else, to your knowledge, had access to the safes besides you? Security? Sometimes, again, a trusted assistant? When you say security, would that cover all the individuals whose photos we just looked at? Yes. How frequently did you access safes in Sean's residence? Not super frequently, but I had access to them occasionally. For what reason would you have access to the safes? If Sean needed me to get money out of, or somebody asked me to get something out of it? On those occasions, what, if anything, did you observe inside the safes? I mean, there was always cash, jewelry, sometimes like tapes and SD cards from cameras, and guns, and yeah, it depend on which safes. Okay, you mentioned tapes from cameras. Are you referring to videotapes? Yes, videotapes. And you mentioned guns. Which residence did you see guns inside the safe? I saw it in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami, and also Alpine, New Jersey. Can you describe the size of the guns you saw inside the safe in those 4 residences? I only ever saw handguns. When, if ever, have you seen guns outside of Sean's safes? A few times. And who had the guns when you saw them outside of Sean's safe? They were just laid out by security. They were just on the table. Do you recall an incident involving Sean and Suge Knight? Yes. Were Sean and Suge Knight friends or rivals? Rivals. Can you describe what happened? Sean and I were having a freak off at one of his houses in LA. And I just remember we were kind of like just chilling at this point. And D-Rock came in and he said that Suge was down at Mel's Diner, which was just right down the hills. And they quickly packed up and drove down there. What was your reaction? I was crying. I was screaming like, please don't do anything stupid. I just was really nervous for them. I didn't know what it meant, what they were going to do. Did they return? They did. Have you ever handled Sean's guns? Handled? I've been handed, yeah, but scared. Who handed a gun to you? I don't know specifically who, but it was some security in the car. Approximately when did this happen? It happened later in our relationship. We were going to a club hosting in downtown Los Angeles, in downtown LA. And what do you recall about that night? I remember we took mushrooms and I was really like high and I was handed the gun to just hold in my bag. But I was just freaking out the whole time that it was going to go off. I hadn't used or learned to operate a gun at that point. So what did you do after the gun was in your bag? At what point? You mentioned that you were handed a gun in your bag. Mm-hmm. How long was it in your bag? It was in my bag for the duration of the club visit. So like about an hour and a half. And how did you feel while the gun was in your bag? just terrified. I didn't want anyone to touch me, come near me. I just stayed like sitting in the back. You testify that who else was present when the gun was in your bag? There was a driver and security. I just don't know exactly who. Was Sean present? He was. What, if anything, strike that. After you left the club, what did you do with the gun? As soon as we got in the car, I gave it to whoever the security was. Just didn't want it. Why did you do that? I had no idea why I had it in the first place. And I just wanted to not be holding a loaded gun if I was. And aside from the time you just described, when the gun was in your bag at the nightclub, do you recall handling Sean's guns at any other time? I recall handling objection to Sean's guns. I'll rephrase, Your Honor. All right, responds the court. Aside from the time a gun was in your purse at the club, do you recall handling guns at any other time? Yes. Can you tell me about that? It's a vague memory. Just they came out here and there, and the guns were taken out here and there. So just like a, I always felt like it's just a little bit of a scare tactic. I didn't really know for what purpose. Where were the guns taken out from? From the safe? Where were the safes? In the closets in his homes? And whose homes were those? Sean's. Circling back to the Suge Knight incident, you described Sean and D Rock packing up? Mm-hmm. What do you mean by packing up? I mean, it was like I wasn't even there. They just put on a bunch of black clothes, covered up their heads, went in the safe, grabbed guns, and the next thing I knew, they were in the SUV. Just objection. Objection to foundation and knowledge. Defense objects. The court responds, Miss Johnson, can you lay some foundation and knowledge? Sure. After you saw them pack up, what did you see them do? I saw them get dressed and leave the house. And you mentioned they returned? Is that correct? Yes. Approximately how long when they left did they return? It really wasn't that long. I couldn't imagine it was probably like, I don't know, definitely less than an hour, 30 minutes, 30, 45 minutes tops. I want to turn to a different topic now. Okay. You testified early that Sean mentioned voyeurism to you. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. How did Sean describe voyeurism to you? He described voyeurism as a fantasy that he had where he would want to see me with another man and having s sexual interaction, talking. Yeah. Okay. He would watch. What, if anything, did Sean say to you about swinging? Swinging was brought up separately, and it was a lifestyle that he taught me about couples that switch partners, and yeah, I didn't really have too much knowledge of it. You testified early that you eventually started having freak offs with Sean. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. How did the freak offs that you did compare to how Sean describes voyeurism to you? Can you rephrase that? Sure. Of course. Let's talk about the freak offs first off. I think that will be easier. How soon into the relationship did Sean mention voyeurism to you? It was within the first like 6 months to a year. It was very early. And what, if anything, did Sean say about the identity of the other person who would be involved in the S acts? He said he wouldn't know them, that it would more than likely be a stranger, an escort, or a dancer. Earlier, you also testified that Sean physically hurt you in your relationship. Do you recall that testimony? Yeah. Relative to when Sean first started physically hurting you, did the conversation about voyeurism happen? Relatively close together, I would say. Which one happened first? There was abuse first, and then the conversation after. To be clear, the conversation about voyeurism, What was your reaction when Sean told you about voyeurism? I was shocked. I wasn't expecting that. I just really felt like at loss. I didn't know how to react. I didn't want to upset him if I said that it scared me or I said anything outside of okay, like, let's try it, because I was always just down for the things that he wanted to do. I was really nervous, really, really nervous. Approximately, how old were you when Sean first proposed freak offs to you? I think I was just 22. And how long after Sean mentioned his interest in seeing you have S with another man was the first freak off? Within the first like 2 to 3 months of him telling me about it, why did you agree to try a freak off? That's a great question. I wanted to make him happy. I was in a really significantly mature relationship that I don't think I was prepared for. And now when I look at it, but yeah, I loved him and I didn't want him to think that I thought anything bad of him for it. I just wanted to make him happy. Where was the first freak off? It was at one of his homes that he was renting in Los Angeles. Where was it inside the home? In his bedroom? Ms. Gavin, can you pull up for identification only government exhibit 2A-627 for the court and the parties? Ms. Ventura, do you recall who is depicted in government exhibit 2A-627? Yes. Who is that? That is the first escort that we had an encounter with. Okay. When you say escort, do you mean freak off? A freak off, yeah. Okay, is this a fair and accurate photograph of the escort? Yes. Government offers exhibit 2A-627. Estavio says no objection for the defense. Court says I'll admit it, and they admit all exhibits. Can you please publish that for the jury, Miss Gavin? Miss Ventura, do you know the name of the individual depicted in government exhibit 2A-627? I don't remember. If I refer to him as the first escort, will you know who I'm talking about? Yes. What do you understand his occupation to be? I understand him to be a stripper, a dancer in Vegas, I think. At this first freak off, are you aware if the first escort was paid? Yeah, he was paid. What was he paid to do? He was paid to entertain, to dance, and have some like intercourse with me. Who arranged for the first escort to be present at the first freak off? Sean did. What, if any, drugs did you take at the first freak off? We took ecstasy and drank alcohol. And earlier you testified that ecstasy is a press pill. Is that right? Yes. Was there any particular kind of ecstasy you took at the first freak off? Those were the blue dolphins that I spoke about earlier. The same pill for Miami? Yeah. At what point in the freak off did you first take the ecstasy? Before anything started. Who provided the ecstasy to you? Sean. What did you wear at the first freak off? Specifically, I don't know exactly, but it was definitely an outfit from a S store, Hustler, or something with some really high platform shoes, dancing shoes. What, if anything, did you do to disguise your appearance? On that first meeting, Sean told me that he would wear a mask, so I wore a masquerade mask. And you described the really tall platform heels. Who, if anyone, told you to wear those heels? Sean did. Can you describe what happened at the first freak off? After we took drugs and we had a conversation, Sean had a conversation with the dancer, and then shortly after that, he came down to my room and performed and stood in the doorway and danced for a little while I just watched. And while Sean watched us, what happened next? It was just a gradual, I should say, every freak off was like directed by Sean. Like we knew specifically where he wanted everyone to be, the lighting and such. So over that, the first session, we just kind of like ended up get closer and closer and talking to each other, and then eventually had to put oil on each other. And yeah, you used the word session. What do you mean by session? A session is in a freak off would be like a full time with an escort until basically they finish. They eat January. Would a session include all of the S acts that led up to the. Yeah, it would be pretty standard. Yeah. Do you recall how many sessions you had with the first escort at the first freak off? I believe we had at least two. And you testified earlier that the first escort was paid. How were you aware that he was paid? I knew because Sean told me. What, if anything, did Sean say to you about paying the escort? That he had to go pay him, and he went and paid him. Approximately how much, if you know, was the escort paid? I don't know specifically. I just know that the escort were paid in the thousands. After this first freak off, how did you feel? Well, I was high, so there wasn't too much feeling. I think it was a mixture of dirty and confusion with that. With like, okay, he's really happy with me and I did something right. So just really confusion. I didn't know what was going to happen after that. I didn't know if we were going to be doing it more frequently because I was willing to. I didn't know. So, what, if anything, did you tell Sean about how you felt about the first freak off? I honestly don't remember. Did there come a time when Sean proposed another freak off? Yes. How soon after? It was pretty soon after, within weeks. How did you respond? It was the same nervousness feeling, like what am I going to do? I can't say no. Like, I've already done it. And I ultimately said yes. Why did you feel you couldn't say no? Just didn't want to make him upset. Yeah, I didn't want to make him upset. I didn't want to make him angry and regret having told me about his experience that was so personal. I like his trust meant a lot to me at that point. What concerns, if any, did you have about Sean becoming upset with you? There were concerns. Objection, leading, defense speaks. Grounds, the court were asked. Did you say leading? Defense says yes. Court says that's overruled. Miss Ventura, do you want me to re-ask the question? Yes. You testified that you were concerned that Sean might be upset with you. Yeah. What concerns, if any, did you have if Sean was upset with you? His anger, really, his mood change, like what that was going to do with the rest of the day, and just how we felt about me and our relationship. So it could be different things. How frequently did you have freak offs with Sean after they started? After they started, they became almost weekly, I would say. And how often, if at all, did the freak offs change over time? It became more, depending on if we were spending time with each other. It would become less, but it was weekly for a consistent amount of years. And approximately what year was the last freak off? The final freak off, 2017, 2018. And you testified early that the approximate duration of a freak off was like 2 or 3 days. Do you recall that testimony? Yes. Is that accurate? Yes. How long were you awake during the freak offs? The whole time. Did you get any sleep? No. Did you want to sleep? Yes. How did you stay awake that whole time? The drugs, honestly, helped. What kind of drugs kept you awake? Well, ecstasy and Molly for sure. We started to do other drugs like cocaine later on. Who gave the ecstasy? Sean. Who gave you the Molly? Sean. Who gave you the cocaine? Sean. You testified early that the longest freak off was 4 days. Do you remember that testimony? Yes. Who decided when a freak off was over? I mean, ultimately, it would be Sean. Discuss it and say this is the last one, and then hopefully that would be the last one. And when you say the last one, are you referring to a session? To a session, yes. Between when the freak off started and when they ended, approximately 2017 or 2018, do you recall every freak off you participated in? No, that would be impossible. What are some of the reasons that would be impossible? The frequency, the drugs used, just it was crazy. In the same time period, did you want to engage in every freak off that you participated in? No. Why is that? I just felt like it was all I was good for to him. I just felt pretty horrible about myself. I felt disgusted. I felt humiliated. I didn't have those words to, like, put together at that time, like how horrible I really was. I really felt. And I couldn't talk to anybody about it. So you testified a few moments ago that you did freak offs because you did not want to make Sean angry. Yeah. During the relationship, what did Sean do when he was angry? He would be violent with me. Um, his look would just change over. He would just become a different person and just didn't know what was going to happen. When you say his look would change over, what do you mean by that? The best way for me to describe it is like his eyes go black. Just it's like the version of him that I was in love with was no longer there. Was there any parts of the freak offs that you enjoyed? The time spent with him? And what about the time spent with him did you enjoy? Just at that time, just I'm sorry, just the one-on-one time I would get because there was always so many people around and I did feel very close to him. So as sad as it was, I thought like it was the only time I could get. When you said the only time you could get, are you referring to the freak offs? Yeah, yes. And specifically, are you referring to the one-to-one time with Sean? Yeah, yes. Okay, what, if any, discussions did you have with Sean about not wanting to participate in freak offs? I definitely brought it up, but gently because I didn't want to upset him or make him angry with me for even sharing it. But I just treaded lightly when I would bring it up. Sometimes I would email him about it like I just didn't want anything bad to happen. When you say you didn't want anything bad to happen, what do you mean by anything bad? I just mean anything bad could be him being violent, but also him just saying, okay, well, I'll find somebody else to do it with. Like, like when you really care about somebody and you're in love with them, you don't want to disappoint them. So when you would talk to Sean about how you were feeling, how much of your concerns were you able to express to him? Objection, leading. Court says, maybe you can rephrase. Sure. Miss Ventura, when you said earlier that you would talk to Sean gently about how you were feeling, do you recall? Yeah. Why would you talk to him gently? I just never wanted him to feel like I judged him for it. But I wanted him to know that, like, this made me feel like doing this made me feel horrible. It made me feel worthless, that, like, I didn't have anything else to offer him. How would he respond when you would say things to him like this? He was pretty dismissive. I find that I expressed myself quite a bit, and it just kind of went like he didn't really care, like it was unheard. Objection. The defense objects. Grounds. Speculating about whether or not he really cared. The court says that's overruled. Miss Ventura, you said Sean was dismissive? Yes. When you expressed these concerns, what did you do? I'm sorry. It's okay. You testified that Sean was dismissive. Do you remember that? Yes. What would he say to you when you express concerns? He would say he would call me predictable. He would be like, I know you don't want to do the freak offs anymore. I already know what you're thinking. And at that point, I would try to backpedal and say, no, 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 no. I was predictable. How frequently would this happen? Frequently enough. Yeah, I said it more than once, more than a handful of times. Miss Ventura, I'm going to, Miss Gavin, can you please pull up the identification for the parties and the court's only government exhibit 3A 107? Miss Ventura, do you recognize what this document is? Yes. What is it? It's an email between me and Sean. How do you recognize it? Our names. And is this a true and accurate communication between you and Sean? Yes. The government would offer Government Exhibit 3A 117 at this time, pursuant to the stipulation in Government Exhibits 1302, paragraph 1. No objections from the defense. Court says, all right, it will be admitted. So evidence is admitted. Miss Gavin, could you please publish to the jury, if possible, to put one page and page 2 side by side? Miss Ventura, I'm going to direct you to the very bottom communication on page 2. Do you see where that is? Yes. Okay, who is the communication from? At the very bottom is from me. Okay, the name says BG New Pin. Yeah, baby girl was my name I was called. Is baby girl a name Sean called you? Yes. Who was this communication to? This is to Pop Pop. Who is Pop Pop? Sean. Why did you call Sean Pop Pop? There was a period early in our relationship where he wanted me to have a nickname for him, and I didn't want to call him anything that anyone else had called him. So he asked me what I called my grandfather, and I said Pop Pop. How did you feel about calling Sean the same name you called your grandfather? I thought it was weird at that time, and now I just feel like it was disrespectful. What's the date of this first message? April 19th, 2010. Okay. One more question about the nicknames for you. Besides Baby Girl, are there any other nicknames that Sean had called for you? He called me Cece. What does Cece stand for? Cassie Combs. In this first message, what is the subject line? It says, I really need to F. Who sent that email? I did. How does Sean respond to your message in the next communication? He says, so you going to F? Want to call someone? What is your understanding of want to call someone is referencing? Want to call someone is like want to call an escort for a freak off. And when you sent the communication, I really want to F, why did you send that? Because I wanted to be with him and that was my way of saying it. And when you said you wanted to be with him, are you referring to Sean? Sean specifically, yes. During your relationship with Sean, who did you want to have S with? I wanted to have S with him. Do you want to have S with the escorts? No. So turning now, Miss Gavin, can you take that down, and if you could blow out the bottom communications on page 1? So directing your attention to the first communication, your response. What do you respond to Sean saying, want to call someone? I say, I want to F you. Are you crazy? Why did you respond that way? Because that's exactly how I felt, and I didn't want to call anyone. Miss Gavin, if you can take that down. So starting from that point, I'm going to read Sean's message, and you'll read your messages through to the end. Okay. So just joking. I want to talk to you about something tomorrow. Going to sleep. Love you. Is it going to stress me out? What is it about? Freak offs. It can wait. It's not a big deal. Now you don't want to do it anymore? Oh, I already know. You are so predictable. Really? Okay, since that's definitely what it was. We'll leave it at that then, since I'm so predictable. Have a good night. Whatever, baby. I'm not going to play no games with you, and you ain't going to keep shutting me down. I'm not shutting you down. I never do. If anything, it's always the other way around. I wasn't going to say I didn't want to do it anymore. What were you going to say? So, directing your attention to Sean's message in about the middle of the page saying, now you don't want to do it anymore. What did you understand him to be referring to in the message? That he knew that I didn't want to do the freak offs anymore. And how did you react after Sean sent this message where he said, now you don't want to do it anymore? I already know you're so predictable. I mean, I tried to backpedal. I said, yeah, okay, definitely what it was, just kind of playing it off or trying to. Why would you backpedal in situations like this? Because I didn't want to make him angry. Like, directing your attention to Miss Gavin, can you please take that down the top. If you can blow up the top, please, the first two, directing your attention to the end of your message here where you said, I wasn't going to say I didn't want to do it anymore. Do you see that? Yes. Is that accurate? Accurately how I felt? Yes. No. Why did you say that if that wasn't how you felt? I didn't want him to make him think I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want him to be upset or not trust me. During you said you didn't want him to be upset. During your relationship, what did Sean do when he was upset? He would be a scary person. He would be violent or also just somehow figured out how to make it happen anyway, no matter how uncomfortable it made me. When you say make it happen anyway, what does it refer to? The freak offs. Okay, Miss Gavin, can you take down this exhibit? Miss Ventura, turning back to the freak offs. In the beginning, was Sean open at the freak offs about his true identity? He was not. How, if at all, did he disguise his identity? Well, he started with the masquerade mask. Sometimes he would wear a hat or something covering his face. Were you open about your true identity? I was not either. And what, if anything, did you do to hide your identity? The same thing as far as the mask. I would wear wigs. Who asked you to wear a wig? Sean. Who asked you to wear a mask? Sean. Over the period of time that you did freak offs with Sean, did you always wear wigs and masks? No, not always. How did that change? Eventually I don't think it was too difficult to figure out who he was because he would talk. But eventually just be comfortable enough with the escort or person that was there to just remove the coverings. Besides a wig and a mask, what other clothes would you wear for the freak offs? Always super like see-through netting outfits. It varied, just sexy outfits from a S store. What are some of the stores you would buy outfits at? In LA, there is a store called Pleasure Chest, Hustlers on Sunset. Here in the city, there's just like little shop everywhere. In addition to the outfits you described, did you wear shoes? I did. Every time? I did. Every time. Yeah. What kind of shoes? The lucid stripper dancer shoes? Yeah. What kind of heels do those have? Extremely high heels. Who decided what you would wear to the freak offs? I would purchase outfits and show Sean and see what he liked best. Would you wear the outfit that Sean selected? Yeah. And with respect to the high heels you talked about for a long time, would you wear those high heels during the freak offs? I would wear them throughout. If there was a break, I might take them off, but yeah, throughout. What conversation, if any, did you have with Sean about preparing your physical appearance for a freak off? I mean, he would just ask me, like, did you get a wax? Are your nails done? Do you have a tan? Just like basic lists. How long did it take to prepare your physical appearance for a freak off? It could take like all of that daytime. Would that be taken up by the things you mentioned, like getting your nails done, getting a wax, and getting a tan? Generally, getting supplies, everything, yep. What, if any, body piercing did you have while you were dating Sean? I had to get my nip pierced, and prior to, way back, I had my belly button pierced and a hook piercing. Okay, so starting with the nip pierce, when did you get the nip piercing? I initially got one with my friend and took it out. This was like early on in LA. I just took it out and then he made a suggestion that I do both. So the next weekend I went and did both. Yeah. When you say he made a suggestion that you do both, who is he? Sean. And what does both refer to? Both nip. Did you want to pierce both nip? At that time, I think I did. I took the initial one out because of the pain, but yeah, I thought it looked cool. And you mentioned a piercing. What's that? It's like a piercing that like basically sits on your area. And when did you get that piercing? I got that shortly after the nip piercing. Why did you get that piercing? Sean's suggestions. He actually came with me, yeah. Early, you testified that the first freak off was at Sean's house. Do you remember that testimony? Yeah. Were there any other freak offs at his house? Yeah, there were others. Which of his homes did you have freak offs in? I would say mostly all of them except for Mapleton. Does that include his home in Miami? Yes. Does that include his apartment in New York City? Yep. And besides his home, what, if any, other homes did you have freak offs at? In my apartments, my homes? Which of your homes did you have freak offs at? I think all of them, except for the Studio City house. So does that include the West End address in New York? Yes. Does that include 18 Dauphine? Yes. And does that include 875 Comstock? Yep. And besides homes and apartments, at what other locations did freak-offs occur? Hotels mostly? And in what other cities did you have freak-offs with Sean and a male escort? New York, Miami, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Ibiza, Spain, Turks, and Caicos. Random places. What about Las Vegas? Las Vegas as well. So going through, you mentioned New York City. What are some of the hotels that you had freak offs at in New York? New York would be the London Trump Hotel in Gramercy. Honestly, you name it, we probably did it there. What about the Intercontinental Hotel? 44th Street? Yep. What were some of the hotels you had freak offs? Elie Midrad was frequent. Beverly Hills Hotel, the London there as well. Shutters on the Beach. There's where else? Other places? What about the Intercontinental in LA? Century City? Thank you. Yeah. And in Miami, what are some of the hotels where you had freak offs? Madrid Oriental Satene, the Fountain Blue, the One Hotel. Yeah. What type of rooms were freak offs usually held in? They were usually held in like a room that had like a living room that you could close the door, or like an extra room with an additional bathroom. So, like a small suite, junior suite. Who, if you know, booked the hotels? It varied. Sometimes it was someone like Tony Fletcher on staff. Occasionally I would book hotel rooms. Yeah. Who, if you know, paid the hotel rooms? I believe Sean paid for the hotel rooms. What are some of the names that were used on hotel reservations? Jackie Starr was the name I used. Frank Black, Frank White. There were all types of names. Turning to Jackie Starr, why did you use the name Jackie Starr? That was a name that I don't know who came up with it. It was him or me. That I used to actually book dancers. So I would use the name instead of my own name and then just start using it as a hotel room name. And you mentioned Frank White and Frank Black. Mm-hmm. Whose aliases were Frank White and Frank Black? They were Sean's. What, if any, supplies were needed for the freak offs? Main supplies were baby oil, Glide, lube, and C's. Who typically brought the supplies to the freak offs? More often than not, it was staff. The room was usually stocked by the time we got there. If not, if there was a last minute situation that I set it up, I would get things, or sometimes Sean would bring them. When you say staff, whose staff are you referring to? Sean's staff. Which position on Sean's staff would be tasked with stocking the hotel rooms? Assistant, security? You mentioned baby oil. What brand of baby oil was used? Johnson's baby oil. How was the baby oil used during the freak offs? It was just as important as everything else, as being there. We used it quite a bit. Where was it? Where was the baby oil placed? We poured it all over our bodies, had to be glistening. Yeah. Which participants in freak offs, if any, used the baby oil? Everyone. That would include you? Yes. Does that include the escort? Yes. Did that include Sean? Yes. What temperature was the baby oil when it was poured on your body? It was always heated. Like, keep the cap on, put it in the sink with hot water, and let it warm up. Who wanted the baby oil to be heated? Sean. You mentioned that the baby oil was used because you had to be glistening. Uh huh. Who told you that you needed to be glistening? Sean, it was his preference. How frequently would baby oil be applied to be glistening? Like every 5 minutes? It was a lot. What, if any, comments would Sean make about needing to apply baby oil? He would, if he felt like you were too dry, he would let you know. What would he say? He would say, "You're too dry. You need to put some more oil on, or you need to be glistening. You need to be you need to be shining." Yeah. Who directed the application of the baby oil during the freak offs? I would say that that was heavily on Sean. Occasionally, I would say that we needed more too, because I just knew what to do. Why did you know what to do? It was a very choreographed experience. Who choreographed the experience? Sean? During the freak offs, who applied the baby oil to you? I applied it to myself, sometimes Sean, sometimes the escort. Would you apply baby oil to anyone? Sometimes with the escort, sometimes to Sean. How did you usually apply the baby oil? You just squirt it on out of the bottle? Were there any other ways of applying baby oil at a freak off? There was one time where I got to, I think it was at an Il Mirage in Beverly Hills, and there was a pool, like a blow up pool, and it was filled with lube and oil. So that was a different way. When there was the blow up pool that was filled with lube and oil, what did you do with the pool? I don't know what happened to the pool, honestly. I'm sorry, strike that. When there was a pool and oil, did you get into the pool? I did, with my outfit, my shoes. It was quite dangerous. Who, if anyone, asked you to get into the pool? Sean, it was his idea. Did you want to get into the pool of baby oil? No, especially not in a hotel room like that. It was such a mess. It was like, what are we doing? Yeah. Why did you get into the pool with baby oil? At that point, I couldn't say no. Yeah. It would have been all bad. Yeah, where I don't. When you say all bad, what do you mean? Objection. Defense objects. Calls for speculation. Your Honor, the witness just used, the court interjects. I think just the verbiage is a little vague. I think you can ask a more focused question and you'll get a response. Sure. You testified that if you did not get into the pool with the baby oil, that it would be bad. Yeah. What concerns did you have about not getting into the pool with baby oil? That, amongst other things, just his temper. If that is something that he wanted, Sean wanted to happen, that's what was going to happen. There wasn't another way around it. Miss Johnson, questioning continues. Approximately how many bottles of baby oil would be used in a typical freak off? A lot. I would say definitely somewhere close to 10. What size were those bottles? The larger size bottles. Were there freak offs where you ran out of baby oil? Objection, the defense objects. Your Honor, at this point, it's getting a little cumulative, the court interjects. Let's see if we can wrap this up and move on. You also mentioned Astro Glide. How was that used at freak offs? Objection, irrelevant. Your Honor, it's a supply. The court asked for a sidebar. Okay, this is day one of Cassie Ventura. There's going to be another part to day one, clearly, because this video is going to be very long. The reading and the detail of all this is definitely very long. Guys, wait for the next part of day one of Cassie, which will be a day one part two, and we will follow that order as the transcripts are shown. Okay, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Hit the like button, please subscribe, and please do me a favor and support the channel. If you did, I appreciate you with a super chat, memberships, Cash App, whatever it is. I appreciate any support, guys. This takes time and a lot of hours and a lot of memory and space that I'm going through right now. So please support. I'll see you guys on the next one. Let me know what you guys think in the comments of everything.